The views expressed on this broadcast of the Take 12 Recovery Radio Show do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting or its affiliates. KHLT and Take12Radio.com are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Remember me, I'm the one down on the floor, telling these people that I ain't there no more. I'm calling on the street, I'm just about to lose my mind.
Welcome to Walking Through the Big Book with Chris Schroeder and Monty Meyer. And now, here's those two guys who investigate prior to contempt, Chris and the Monty'man.
Welcome, family, to another fine episode of Walking Through the Big Book. I am your co-host, the Monty'man, and of course, the one and the only Chris Schroeder. Hey, Chris.
What's up, Monty? How you doing?
I'm doing so much better. Was feeling under the weather there last week. We had to play the best of, so to speak, and I had a bronchial infection, but now I'm all better. Just a little bit of a cough. So, are you staying healthy out there, man?
I am. I haven't been sick yet, so I'm knocking wood.
Yeah. Well, you got to stay healthy because we get so much out of what you have for us. And speaking of that, my friends, let me give you our email address if you'd ever want to comment, like to complain or praise, either one. We enjoy both. And that is take12radio@comcast.net. And you can click on our contact link too. And we are in the chapter How It Works, are we not?
Yes, we are. We're at the bottom of page 60.
All right, man. Well, without further ado, let's go.
Okay. Last 2 weeks ago, the last show, what we did is we covered how it works. How it works is read traditionally at a lot of support group meetings. And what we did was we went back to the original manuscript version and then to the current version. And I think at least I got a better understanding of what they were talking about with that. We're going to pick it up. We're going to pick it up after the How It Works that gets read so often. And at the bottom of page 60, it says the first requirement is that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Now, before that it says just what do we mean by that and just what do we have to do. So being convinced we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood Him, just what do we mean by that and just what do we do? It's a very ambiguous, just turn it over. You hear, just turn it over. You hear that until the cows come home.
I know.
And a lot of times if you go up to somebody and you ask them, hey, what do you mean by that? How do you turn it over? They have no more clue than you do. Mm-hmm. But there are some specifics in this book that talk about the process of turning one's will and one's life over to God. Now, if you look at the term will and you look at the term life, will can be looked at as your thinking. You know, the last will and testament is basically the last thinking of an individual and what they want. Life is basically your actions. You know, we're judged by our actions. So if you turn your will and your life over to the care of God, that means your thinking and your actions. The first requirement to do that is that you need to really believe that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. This is where a lot of advisors or sponsors say, well, look, if you did not need a new manager, let's just look at your life. How's it been working for you? And most of the time, the people that are working through the steps are in a crisis of one kind or another. A lot of crises come along with alcoholism or drug addiction. and your life problems pile up on you that become astonishingly difficult to solve. A lot of things like that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be convinced that if you continue to steer the boat, you're going to run onto the reef just like you have been. We keep thinking, oh, we'll do it right next time. Well, if we would have been able to do it right next time would have happened a long time ago.
Chris,
we need to really, this is a requirement.
Chris,
to move forward.
I'd like to ask.
You think you can still do it yourself?
Yeah.
You really can't move on.
Hey, Chris, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question here, real quick. Being convinced. I'm thinking when I first read this book, I wasn't sure I knew what convinced meant, but I was like, oh, well, how am I convinced if I haven't read the book already? I'm not too sure. And somebody told me, and then I remember when we talked about in the first part of this book, somebody told me, well, you need to stop and read the stories in the back. That may help you be convinced. And then I was.
Sure. Whatever you need to do to get to convinced, to be convicted that you need guidance in your life.
Yeah. Whatever
you need to do. Sometimes you need to go back and reread the first 60 pages because sometimes you need to read the stories. Sometimes you need to tell your story. Sometimes you just need to hear other people share their experience. Whatever it takes to get to convinced. But if you're not convinced that you need some serious guidance in your life, then I just don't see that you're going to move through the rest of the steps with any conviction.
Sure.
On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Now, another exercise that I've used for this, if you look at the next 3 pages or so, starting at the first requirement, starting where we're starting tonight, you'll see that what Bill does is he paints a beautiful picture of the self-centered, self-seeking alcoholic. He really nails us to the wall. And a lot of times we're not going to recognize it. The first time I read this, I was in a treatment center. It was early 1989, and I was handed this by the counselor and told to read it. And I remember reading this part thinking, this is really true about my roommate. It was very, very difficult for me to accept this as my operational platform, but it actually was. I was motoring along on selfishness and self-seeking. So a lot of times, like we did back in the doctor's opinion, and a lot of times it's good to turn these statements into questions. In other words, Monty, are you almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though your motives are good? And you need to honestly ask yourself: is this the case with me? Is this what my spiritual condition consists of at this point in time? Is this what I'm working with right now? Because it's not very good to be in collision with other people all the time. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Every person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. I really love that description because it is really apropos. Here I am. I'm placed on this earth for whatever divine purposes God has in store for me, and I'm living on selfishness and self-centeredness. I can't manage my own life. I'm alcoholic, yet I'm running around deciding what the boss should do, how my family should act, how my friends should be treating me. In other words, I'm an actor. I'm a bit player in this game of life.
Uh-huh.
Yet I want to start rearranging all the rules and everybody's task lists. I've got problems with everybody. It's almost like if you were in a play, almost like going up to the director every 5 seconds and saying, no, they should say this. No, I should do that. No, they should say that. It's unbelievably self-centered, yet that's how we operate. And we get resentful if people aren't playing the roles that we assign them the way we assign them, and we get frightened if they don't act the way we want them to act, and we're way too busy trying to manipulate other people than we are trying to get to become better actors ourselves.
Hey, Chris, can you come by my house and explain that to my oldest son as it relates to his little brother?
I mean, isn't it true though, Mike?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I do it today. Yeah.
I still do it nowhere near as much as I used to.
Right.
I used to know what everybody should be doing. One of the greatest stories I ever heard was from Chuck C. out in California.
Uh-huh.
He ran around, he made all his amends, and after he made amends to everybody, he said, "Listen, I will never ever ask you anything ever again in your life except one thing. If there's anything I can do for you, please let me know." And he never tried to manipulate or tell anybody what to do after that. I mean, when I first heard that story, I go, how is that even possible to not, jump in the middle of everyone's life all the time?
Mm-hmm.
How do you be a parent? How do you be a husband? How do you be a family member? How do you go to work? How do you do anything if you don't tell people what to do? But it's actually possible, to get through life without telling everybody what to do.
Yeah.
In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. We might think we've got really good motives. No, really, I'm right. If you would do it this way, everything would be great. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. That's the way I like to look at myself. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits. So I'm going to get you to move around the playing field. If I have to bring you flowers or if I have to point a gun at you, I am going to get you to move around the playing field. It's important for me to be manipulating my environment, and that means you got to do what I want you to do. What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. He begins to think that life doesn't treat him right. He decides to exert himself more. He becomes on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit him. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure that other people are more to blame. That's what I thought. I said, I would give you that maybe I didn't handle the situation as best as I could. But those guys, it absolutely had to be somebody else's fault when I had problems in my life. It would have been way too inconvenient for my problems to be of my own making. Mm-hmm. Don't give me the responsibility of all of my problems, please. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is his basic trouble? Is he not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only he manages well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants? And do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Is he not, even in his best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? I certainly was. Monty, I grew up, and I really saw that I had the type of family that wasn't a very close family. Mm-hmm. We kind of all did our own thing. I mean, that was the impression I had of my family of origin. And then one day I realized that there was one more vacation coming up that they were all going on. They were a very close family. They just weren't close to me.
Yeah.
Because bringing me along on vacation or involving me in something, I'm going to make it about me. there's going to be issues with how people are acting while we're on vacation or something. So, my family just kind of divorced themselves of me when it came to as much as they could when it came to me spending time with them.
Did they ever point that out to you?
No, I realized it in inventory one day. They drive around the country with each other, and I mean, I'm back in the fold. Please trust me, I'm the first invited now. But I just could not believe people weren't seeing, that I really had the clue that everybody should have. It was just amazing. And the alcoholic is like somebody who, they'll get sober and 5 minutes later they're wondering why everybody isn't following them.
Yeah.
Well, why isn't everybody listening to me? Don't you understand I'm right? And again, it's the soul sickness. That really is what the problem is with alcoholism. The problem is being the actor, wanting to run the whole play. That's what the problem is with the alcoholic. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily the drinking. The drinking is a symptom of alcoholism.
Yeah.
It's a really bad symptom, especially with low-bottom alcoholics. You can drink yourself to death. But it's a symptom of the actor wanting to run the whole show. Being selfish and self-centered in nature is what's wrong with the alcoholic. The more selfish and the more self-centered you are, the more distance you have from God. And being distant from God is what the Catholic Church calls being in hell today. Mm-hmm. They've redefined the term hell by saying basically it's a separation from God. So the more selfish and more self-centered you are, the more separated you are from the spiritual power that really can bring peace and happiness to your life.
Let me ask you this. Don't you think that, and we talk about these things, these character defects and all this stuff, that what really the problem is and so forth, but don't you think that everybody is like that to some degree?
I think selfishness and self-centeredness can manifest in non-alcoholics. Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely. I think, though, that in the alcoholic or in the person who's substance dependent,
yeah,
I think it's a trait that's almost always very, very apparent, and I think it's something that they need to get over.
Yeah,
they need to get to a point where they're not operating as selfishly and self-centeredly as they have been to be able to recover. The human condition, the human nature is such that we're all prone to character defects. We all fall short in word, thought, and deed every single day. But again, with the alcoholic, these things can kill us. We don't have the option of being selfish and self-centered.
Right.
We want to recover.
Yeah, and so that's the big difference I see too is that these things will take us out, and with the alcoholic, we seem to put a magnifying glass on all this stuff. I mean, the way we beat ourselves up or the way that we praise ourselves.
It's always in extremes.
Yeah,
whatever
always
we
in
do,
extremes.
we do it in extremes.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. Our actor, and again, they're talking about us. When they say our actor, they're
right.
being nice. Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. He is like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. Politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, and the alcoholic who has lost all hope and is locked up. Whatever we protest, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, our self-pity? And you have to ask yourself that question. Is that really what's concerning you most? And it was for me. It was very difficult for me to see that because I didn't really know how those things presented. But when I look back at my last years of drinking and my first months of sobriety, all I could think about was my resentments, my self-pity, and myself. Everything was about me. Now here is an important paragraph. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. What is the root? I mean, think of a plant, think of a tree. The roots are basically what holds it up, what feeds it, and without those roots, it would die. So the root of our troubles is selfishness and self-centeredness. It doesn't say the root of our troubles is drinking or the root of our troubles is drugs. Again, you and I have talked about this over and over again, Monty. The problem isn't necessarily drinking or using drugs. Mm-hmm. The problem is, why do we have to? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
why are we compelled to?
Yeah.
And that comes from the selfishness and the self-centeredness. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Now, I looked very, very deeply at this sentence one time. The person who was taking me through the book at that point in time said, "Chris, what does driven mean to you?" And I thought of a time where I was coming back from the shore with a friend of mine. He was drunk out of his mind. He was in a blackout and just barely conscious. And for some reason, I'm in the car with him. And it was an old Toyota Celica, if you remember those.
Yes, I do.
And we were coming up the New Jersey Parkway, and he had it in fourth gear, floored. This thing was going as fast as it would go. I think it was about 110 miles an hour, 105 miles an hour. It was flat out. We didn't even stop for the toll booths. In other words, we went through the 25-cent toll booths at 110 miles an hour.
Oh, no.
And I am begging him to pull over. I was afraid to do anything because we were going so fast. And finally, he was getting off an exit ramp, and he slid out. We slid off into a ditch, and I was able to get out of the car. But that's what it was like being driven by this guy. I had very little control, and it was very scary and very dangerous. When it says we're driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. What that's telling me is I'm not necessarily really in control of all this stuff. In other words, just recognizing that I'm selfish and self-centered is not going to be enough to get to the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
I am being driven by 100 forms of fear.
That's good.
Self-delusion. You hear in support group rooms all the time, I'm in denial. Denial is not a river in Egypt. I don't think alcoholics have denial very often. Denial is basically you're sitting in a white room and you need to tell somebody it's not white. This room is not white. You know it's white, but you're denying that it's white. What happens with the alcoholic is we're sitting in a white room and we think it's yellow. We really do think it's yellow, and we'll argue till our dying day that it's yellow because we really think that. That's what being deluded is. So we're more apt to being deluded than we are to be in denial.
Gotcha.
We really think things are a certain way, and they're not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And stepping on the toes of our fellows, a lot of times we don't recognize that we're stepping on the toes of our fellows. They may not like being moved around on the stage and told how to play their part. And sometimes people retaliate. Sometimes people cause us problems, and we don't see that we set ourselves up. We started the ball rolling. We placed ourselves in a position to be harmed, and we don't see that either. So that's another type of delusion. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past, we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. Invariably, what does invariably mean? That means without variation. We find that at some point in the past, We've made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. Our problems are of our own making, whether we think so or not. That's one of the reasons why I can't stand support group meetings where all people do is complain. They want to raise their hand, they want to update everybody on the problems they've had that day, and then, they feel a little bit better, and then they move on. Recovery is about recognizing and internalizing the fact that your problems are of your own making. Mm-hmm. You co-created every problem that exists in your life. You are at worst the co-creator. At best, you're the one that's causing all the confusion. And to allow people to think that if they just share their problems, that's going to make them that much less. Sharing is a good starting point. You should share with your spiritual advisor, or you should share with whoever's taking you through this work. But that's only the beginning. You need to recognize that your problems are of your own making, because there's a lot of freedom in that. Mm-hmm. If you're responsible for all the problems in your life, that also means there may be a way out. If you're the one causing all your problems in your life, there's maybe a way you can stop causing problems. If it really is everybody else out there that's at fault, you don't have a prayer of changing everybody else out there. You would be trapped. Coming to the realization that you're responsible for your own problems is actually a very freeing perspective, because it means there's some hope. Maybe you don't need to cause confusion and unhappiness all around you. Maybe there's a way out of it.
Wow, that's great. I never looked at it that way before. That's excellent.
So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. When you're first working with somebody, every once in a while they'll come up with a really lame fourth step or something. They just don't get it. They don't see all the confusion and discord they're causing in their lives. So we usually don't think that we're self-will run riot, but we are. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. Important warning. Kills us. That is a very important warning. It doesn't say that booze will kill us. It says that selfishness will kill us. How do we become unselfish? Well, God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without His aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them, even though we would have liked to. I had moral convictions. I had philosophical convictions. I read a lot of the philosophers and the Bible and all kinds of stuff, and I understood the commandments and the Beatitudes. I knew all that stuff, but there's no way I could live up to it because I was so selfish. If there was a left-hand turn that would get me something and a right-hand turn that would be the right thing to do, more often than not, I would go left because I wanted something right then and there. Yeah. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. Let's say you've admitted or you've come to the realization, Monty, that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of your troubles, and you don't think you need God. What I would do, and what I've done with many, many people is, I'll say, okay, you don't need God. All right, from now on, don't be selfish and don't be self-centered. Starting right now, go. And see how long it's going to last. Yeah. See how far you're going to get. Right until you pull out of the driveway and somebody cuts you off, or you get home and your roommate hasn't done the dishes, or whatever. You can't just not be selfish if it's been part of your nature for so long. You need to have God's help.
Yeah. Oh, man, do we ever. Do we ever.
So this is the how and why of it. first of all, we had to quit playing God. All right, that's a directive. We need to stop playing God. How do we play God? We play God by trying to move other people around the stage. We're by being the actor who wants to run the whole show. How do we know whether God is helping to direct those other actors or not?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do we know what's right and what's wrong? How do we know what's good and what's bad for everybody and everything? What, who appointed us God? So one of the first things you have to start doing, or asking God for help with, is bossing everybody around. Knowing better than everybody else about everything. That needs to be addressed. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. There's three relationship directives in the third step. Another mistake I see people making all the time is they think saying the third step prayer is taking the third step.
Yeah, no, it's not.
It really isn't. The third step prayer is an affirmation prayer. And an affirmation prayer is basically you're affirming something that you already believe. So to say the third step prayer, you do that after you've become convinced of all these things. Otherwise, it's kind of an empty prayer.
Uh-huh.
So if God is going to be the director, what does that mean? That means that we need to seek through guidance, seek God's guidance in matters that pertain to our life. That really comes in a huge way in step 11, seeking direction through prayer and meditation. Mm-hmm. God is going to be the principal. We are His agents. What does that mean? That's another relationship directive. Well, think of a life insurance agent. The life insurance agent knows the rules, is empowered by the home office, and as long as he plays by the right rules, as long as he does everything legally and according to the business plan for the life insurance company, he can go out and he can sell insurance, and that insurance will protect families if loved ones die. So he's empowered by the home office. If we live along spiritual lines, we are being empowered by the home office, which is God, to go out and do our business.
Not by our own power.
No, we're going to be safe and protected. That comes in step 10.
Yeah,
being safe and protected from alcohol. He is the principal. We are His agents. He is the father, and we are His children. I think everybody understands what a parent's role is. Mm-hmm. Parent's role is to bring the child into existence, to nurture it and keep it safe and protected, and to try to teach it how to live. That's what God does with us in many mysterious ways. I think certain lessons come our way until we learn them.
Sure.
And we need to pay attention to those lessons now if God's going to be the Father.
I have been taken to the woodshed more times than I care to admit, but I'm so grateful that God cares enough about me to discipline me.
Monty, personally, like where I am with my life today, I've got so many balls up in the air and so many pieces of business out there that have yet to close, and so many opportunities that have yet to materialize. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely crazy. I mean, if I could make money on opportunities, I would be a wealthy man. But so many of them have not realized. So many of them haven't worked to the point where they're actually affording me money to live on. But I do believe because I seek direction from God, that things are going to be okay. I don't sit around like scared to death about paying the next bill or anything. But that doesn't mean I'm not being responsible. I'm being as responsible as I can be. But I know what it's like to be in a position where you're unsure, and there are things coming at you that don't look like they're really, really comfortable things, but having that sense of peace and knowing that God is the principal, the Father, and the director gives me it gets me away from the fear that I would normally have. If I was living selfishly and self-centered, I'd be freaking out at this point in time in my life. And I think you know exactly what I mean.
I do, and I can't help but think about my sponsor told me when I said, "What is the difference between being worried and being concerned?" He told me, "Well, if you're worried, you're not going to sleep. If you're concerned, you're probably going to be able to sleep tonight." And I think if I'm losing sleep over it, then it's constantly on my mind, and I'm worrying about it and fretting about it. But if I can close the door at work and go home and be part of my family and not have that thing interrupt me, then I'm probably simply concerned and not worried.
Yeah, I think we need to have a concern for our affairs. We need to be responsible. That's certainly part of the spiritual life. But that fear, that anxiety, that sense of impending doom that would follow us around as alcoholics, that's a manifestation. That's a manifestation of alcoholism. That's one of the ways it presents. And when you get to recovered, the state of recovered, those are not things that are going to just devastate you. Those emotional feelings, that shouldn't be part of your spiritual makeup anymore. That's at least that's been my experience and what I believe. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. Bill uses a lot of construction references, and anyone that doesn't know what a keystone is you build an arch, and you have to hold the arch up until the keystone is put into place. And then all the support underneath the arch can be taken away because the keystone holds the arch together. Mm-hmm. So this concept of God as the director, the principal, and the Father is the keystone to the arch through which you will walk to freedom. So if you don't have that keystone in place, if God isn't your director, principal, and Father, you're not going to have an arch through which you can walk to freedom. And there's many construction references in here, and they're very important to pay attention to. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things happened. Each action step has a series of promises. Another thing that I personally don't like is in a support group meeting, they'll read the 12 promises. Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, sure.
Okay, the 12 promises. First of all, there isn't the 12 promises, okay? There are many promises in this book.
Yeah.
If you counted them, there would be well over 200 significant promises in this book. So by putting a shade up on the wall that says the 12 promises, you're short-sheeting, the people. You're basically short-changing somebody by telling them there's only 12. And usually the promises that are read are the ninth step promises, which most people don't even get to because most people don't go through the work to the point of going out and making direct amends. Mm-hmm. So I don't really agree with putting that carrot up on the wall without putting it in context, explaining exactly what you mean by the 12 promises, the 12 ninth-step promises. But you need to at least be halfway through the ninth step before these things are going to manifest. That really should be part of the explanation.
Yeah.
We had a new employer. Being all-powerful, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. So what are you going to need to do if God is going to start taking care of you as the director, the principal, and the Father? What do you need to do? You need to keep close to him and perform his work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter we were reborn. What about reading these promises at the next support group meeting month instead of the 9th step promises? That would cause a little concern, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. And I attend a meeting where the promises are read at the end of each meeting, and I've watched some people appear confused because they don't know. Some people say, "Well, I've experienced some of that stuff now." Well, no, you won't experience it until the 9th step. I think what people are experiencing before the 9th step is these promises that you're pointing out that are here now, because I think we can have those now.
These are unbelievable promises. Like, think about this. More and more we become interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. That's going to be a great thing. As we felt new power flowing, we're going to get power. We're going to get the actual power of God in our lives. As we enjoyed peace of mind. Remember peace of mind? Mind is actual bliss. It's feeling wonderful. We'll be able to live life successfully. We'll face life successfully. We're going to be successful. These are unbelievable promises. As we became conscious of His presence, we begin to lose the fear of today. I'm not afraid of anything that's going to happen today. I'm not afraid of anything that's going to happen tomorrow, or the hereafter. You're not even going to be afraid of death. We were reborn.
Yeah.
Those are pretty significant promises.
Yeah. Pretty powerful. Really
now,
powerful.
I'm going to do one more paragraph here. We were now at step 3. So the affirmation of the 3rd step prayer is we're affirming all of these things that we read here tonight. That's what we're doing when we say the 3rd step prayer. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood Him, God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Now, that prayer goes against every selfish and self-seeking and self-centered instinct we have, because that prayer is basically saying, relieve me of the bondage of being me, so that I can be of help to you. And that particular prayer is really amazing because it attacks alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
If alcoholism is being selfish and self-centered, this particular prayer goes absolutely against that. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to Him. So you need to think well before taking that step. You need to be ready to abandon yourself utterly to God. And this is why they found that the low-bottom alcoholics had a tendency to recover, and some of the people who hadn't been hurt that bad still had a little bit of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
If you are thoroughly convinced that life run on self-will can hardly be a success, you're going to embrace this. If you still think you're doing a good job or you're pretty remarkable, you may not. So again, they found in the early days of Alcoholics Anonymous, a lot of the people who were really in trouble were at a point where they could abandon themselves utterly to Him. They had nowhere else to go. They were out of plans. And AA was very, very successful in the early days with people who were really, really in bad trouble. And that's good news to us today. We don't need to be as hurt as some of these people do. We just need to be paying attention to this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand what recovery is about, and not accept sobriety, but insist on recovery.
Yeah. Good. Oh, I like that. We don't have to accept sobriety, but we need to bask. I like that word, bask. Basking in recovery. I mean, being surrounded by it, and this whole thing about knowing a new freedom. I have to tell you that the freedom that I feel, and people say, feelings, don't trust your feelings, blah, blah, blah. Well, feelings have, there's some real good reasons God gave us feelings. And the freedom that I feel today, Chris, I can't even explain it. I can't begin to explain it. And I think the reason is because it's His freedom that has come my way. It's His power, and I can't explain it. It's just, I just say, hey, it's good stuff, man.
Oh, it absolutely is. So often our first impressions or our understanding of something is wrong. And, when I was first exposed to the 12-step process, I really didn't see how it was going to particularly benefit me. So imagine, I was the perfect I was the textbook case, and yet I really had my doubts about this stuff. Yet, sometimes you just have to. Sometimes you just have to believe that there's a better way and give it a chance. Give it a shot.
Sure. Well, we are going to be looking at step 3 next week. And I'm excited about that. And in fact, my when I used to have a CB radio, my handle was Third Step.
Great.
Well, thank you, Chris, so much once again.
Monty, it's always a pleasure to be on your show. You're doing such great work out there. And listen, you're going to the 12-Step Music Fest. Have a really good time down there. That's down in the Keys. I hope the weather is great for you and you just have a great time.
It's gonna be a ball. And folks, those of you who are listening that are gonna be there, make sure you stop by the Take 12 Radio booth. And we're going to be sharing that booth with Leon Lilly, who's going to join us here on the Take 12 Radio family, doing a show after the first of the year, surrounded around comedy and recovery. I know you're going to enjoy that. So come on by the booth. We want to talk to you, share a little bit of your experience, strength, and hope. And I'll be walking around the festival with my microphone, so look out. I may just corner you, and you may be on the air. All right. Again, another fine show, Walking Through the Big Book with Chris Schroeder. Folks, don't forget to check out all of our shows here at take12radio.com on your internet dial. And until our next broadcast, this is the Monty'man, along with Chris, wishing God's serenity for you.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.